It is 6:04 on March 1st, 2021, and I would like to call the Aging in Place Task Force meeting to order. It's great to see everybody. So due to the virtual nature of the meeting, all voting and attendance is done through roll call. So we will do attendance that may need to be modified as we have other people joining us, but I will go through my list as it was sent out to us earlier. So please just state aye. Joan Johnson. Oh, and also as Carol directed, please state where you are broadcasting from. So Joan Johnson.
You're on mute, Joan.
I'll come back to you in a bit, Joan. Sarah.
Sarah Kinsey, aye. Royal Oak.
Perfect. Paul Webb.
Paul Webb, broadcasting from Royal Oak.
Sue Wells.
Present, Royal Oak.
Paige.
Paige Kimbarski, Madison Heights.
And coming back to Joan. Joan, you just have to unmute. It's usually if you hover around the bottom of the screen, or if you bottom left on mine anyways. I know it's a bit different depending on what.
It looks like she may have signed off. Oh, she's coming down again.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
There
Joan Johnson. Joan Johnson, coming to you from my house in Royal Oak.
Terrific, and I'm Sue McKee, and I am coming from my place of employment. So I'm in Windsor at the moment. So thank you very much, and we'll add as people are able to join us. Okay, so moving on to the next agenda item. So I'm wondering if we might want to come back to this agenda item just because we still have people who haven't joined. Joan, could I ask you to remute, if you wouldn't mind? Are people okay with that? Okay. So we'll come back to that and we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from January 23rd, 2020, over a year ago. So any discussion from those minutes? Okay. Would someone like to pass a motion to?
I'd like to make a motion to pass the minutes.
Do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
Okay, and then we have to, I guess, do roll call to approve, correct? So again, going through the list, Sue Anderson is not yet with us. Joan Johnson.
Yes.
Sarah.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Paul.
Aye.
Sue Wells.
Yes.
And Paige.
I don't vote on it, but
I know. Okay, so motion approved. Minutes are good to go. And next we are approval of the agenda of March 1st, 2021. Any discussion or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. I guess the only addition would be moving the introduction of members to after public comment or sometime between next steps and public comment, just to give everyone a chance to log in.
Yes. Yeah, so let's move that down maybe after even let's see if we're able to do it, like make it number 7.
Okay. I'm good with wherever we want to put it. I just
Yeah.
wanted to.
It just kind of, I'd rather do that partway through
Okay.
if possible. I'd also like to add an agenda item, please, and that is to discuss and look at the task force chair. And we can talk about that when we get there, but if we can add that to the agenda. So maybe number 9.
I'll make a motion to pass the agenda with those 2 modifications.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, so let's do a vote by roll, please. So Joan Johnson,
Approved.
Sarah,
Yep, all good. Thank you. Aye.
myself, I also, Paul,
Aye.
Sue Wells.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes with the agenda with those 2 modifications. Perfect. Okay, so next agenda item is a review of sort of the work that we've done to this point. And I was thinking about this quite a bit because I remember, Joan, us having some discussion around having some kind of a orientation package for new members because there has been so much work. So at this point in time, that hasn't been developed, but I'll try to give a bit of a rundown of where we got or where we started and where we ended a year ago, so that we have a sense of sort of, okay, now how do we move forward from there? I'd also suggest revisiting the minutes if you haven't had a chance to do so. I'm going to put together a package of some documents. I sent some things out tonight, just about a half hour ago, so you may not have even seen them yet, which is fine. But I was going to kind of work on putting together a package of documents that might be helpful. And you know, then we can kind of try to get everybody up to speed. There's also on the city website some information there regarding the task force, and what I'm thinking of specifically is the PowerPoint from our initial kickoff that gives a really good overview of the Age-Friendly Communities program. So it would be a good place to start if you're not familiar with it. So let me just grab here. So for where we started, so the summer of 2018 was when the task force began. And we, at that point in time, had some discussion around various different programs and how we might want to tackle the work ahead. Out of that, a suggestion came to look at the Age-Friendly Communities program through AARP, and we invited Karen, and I'm not going to pronounce her last name correctly, so I'll spell it Kafantaris, Kafantaris. So she attended and provided us a good overview of the program, gave us a sense of what it included, how it came to be, as it originated through the World Health Organization. And so we took that information, thought that it sounded like a program that might work for this community, but opted at that point in time to hear from 2 local communities, Southfield and Auburn Hills, who had already begun that process and were well into it. So they attended a task force meeting, gave us a good sense of what their experience had been like, some lessons that they had learned during that process, and we opted to go forward with this particular program. So the formal application was submitted to AARP in February of 2019. And the kickoff event occurred in April of that same year at the Senior Center. Quickly after that, we pulled together the training. So initially, the first step is to gather data from the community. So a number of focus groups were planned. Those focus groups needed to be facilitated. So facilitators needed to attend training in order to do that. So a number of focus groups were held in April and May. And Alexis Champion, who was the fellow with the city at the time, created some initial feedback based on that early data. And we began the process of starting to think down the road a little bit. So after we gathered the data, the next steps would be to look at creating the domain working groups so that we could start to pull together our initial plan. So we had a couple of sticks in the fire all at one time. We also then began to develop our own survey to go out to community members. So we were gathering information both through the focus group and then more consistent type of information through the survey. So that went out. We also did most of those were completed online, but we received quite a number that were pen and paper surveys as well through setting up some tables and such at the senior center. So I believe we had a total of 671 responses to the survey. Karen from AARP at that time stated that we needed more feedback through focus groups, that we had not really reached the number of responses that we needed. So we planned additional focus groups at that time. And those ran October, November, and January. And so I believe for the focus groups, we had a total, and I believe it was 135. That could be slightly off, but approximately that's where we were. Alexis at that point started to really take a look at the data. She was able to, and I sent out a little bit of that in my earlier email tonight. So she started to gather key themes from the focus groups. Essentially, the focus groups, we were taking very detailed notes from those conversations, and focus group members also completed aspiration sheets. So she did some initial analysis of that information, and then she also took a look at the surveys and pulled data from those 671 responses from the surveys. Following that, we also held, so our last meeting, formal meeting, was in January, but we had 2 working group sessions. And I sent those notes out tonight as well, because I think though that information is going to be really important as we think about what are we doing next, what are those next steps moving forward. So that was really looking at the domain working groups, along with thinking about what we wanted our end plan to look like, because a lot of the feedback we've been given from other communities is have a sense of what you want that document to look like, so that as you're developing the working groups, you have a clear direction that you're headed towards. So we were simultaneously talking about both things. What are the working groups going to look like? How are we going to move forward with those? Who's going to be a part of those groups? And what do we want that plan to look like? So that was sort of where we left off. There's a lot more information and detail specific to that, but quick overview of that initial work that was done prior to our pause last March. So questions from any of that, comments, additions, things that I may have missed? I know it's been some time since we've had a chance to come together.
So can you go over how many responses did we get total from the focus groups versus the survey? I just want to, you said 671. Was that
Survey.
from the survey? And then we had 135 people participate in the
That's
focus
my
groups?
understanding.
Okay.
Very quickly kind of pulling out some of the emails that Alexis, I could be off on that somewhat, but I think that's fairly
Okay.
accurate. Yep. Yes. So at the right before Alexis, as Alexis was kind of wrapping out, she had also sent out all of the raw data from the focus groups. I believe she broke it down based on domain. So if someone, for example, was going to be the lead for the communication domain, she sent that information to each of those group leads. We're going to have to revisit that because obviously our team looks a bit different now. So that's something on our to-do list. But so that information was sent out along with some of the initial data that went out as well, right before she left. Other questions?
I think the only thing I would add to that is just to level set with everyone. We did have a call with Karen. Carol and I did, and we've kind of gotten a year pause. So we have committed to providing an update, not anything more than a formal update of what our next steps are by the end of this month. So we have some time. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, and I would expect, I actually spoke with Karen.
Oh, good.
Actually, no, I emailed Karen just to get a little bit of information from her. I was wondering if other communities had continued during this year, and whether or not any, like had people been running domain working groups during the pandemic, and what did that look like? I was hoping to gather some of that information. No one did. Two, I believe Southfield was the only community that continued to move forward, but they were much further along in the process. So they already had their plan and were beginning to implement it. So at that point, having virtual meetings and moving that process along would be very different than the point that we were at with trying to have these domain working groups going at this time. So, but yeah, the feedback from her was that everyone pressed pause. I would also expect that given the complexity of organizing this right now, that I think ideally we were supposed to have our plan to prepare ready to go to submit in a year. My guess is that if we needed more time than that, based on just the fact that managing this right now is a bit more complex, that I don't expect that there would be any issue or concern with that. I would just think we'd need to communicate that.
Yeah, I think one of, maybe not in this meeting, but as we all wrap our heads around it, I think putting together a timeline and a roadmap for how we're going to get there will be instrumental. So I don't think we have to say like 1 year, so next March we have to have this done, but I think we need to present a projected timeline that's going to take us. And that could be that we want to pause on some things until the governor's orders have loosened some restrictions, and like we continue to meet as a group and formulate how we want to like do this once we're there. And I think that's going to take some time to get back into it. So I think you're right, Sue. I think we have, but I do think we need to communicate that we're working on it and then like commit to a date to present the timeline. I think that would be reasonable.
Yeah, I think that sounds to me manageable for sure, without question. So any other comments or questions or clarification that's needed? Okay, I'm just checking.
I had a question here, or when you were emailing back and forth with Karen, and I didn't check this either on my call, is there any concern that things have changed? So like our data doesn't feel as relevant? I'm just saying that out loud.
I did not ask that question, and I think that that is a really valid question. I know that's been a concern of mine over the past year. And I guess the question would be, which might be something for us to think about when we're looking at tasks moving forward, is would it be helpful to do a bit of some kind of retouch base, sort of do whatever that might look like, right? Just to make sure that the information that we have is still current. Because I know we were finding a lot of the data after we did a bunch of the focus groups that we were getting very consistent messaging. Would this past year change some of those things? Very likely, right? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
People's priorities might look a bit different.
Although I think we consistently heard communication was the top priority. And I mean, I think that this probably elevates that a little bit. Do you know what I'm saying? Being able to get relevant information in a timely manner. I think pandemic certainly brings that to light if you're not getting information in the manner of which you can consume it. So I do think that there's probably some relevant and some things have shifted for sure.
Right. And part of that for me is even thinking about, like, I think some of the issues would still be the same, or as you say, elevated or magnified in the pandemic, but would some of the ideas maybe look a bit different now?
Mhm.
So when we had the aspiration sheets, people might be saying, okay, wait,
Yep.
until none of us could have predicted this.
Yeah.
That might shed some light or might have created some ideas around what's needed or would be helpful for sure. So I think we have to think about that. Other thoughts, questions, insights?
This is Joan. I'm not really sure how we could go about capturing any changes in the responses from the folks that we talked about. Have the issues really changed, or has the pandemic added a layer that we would never have thought about had this experience not occurred? For example, we had people saying that, talk about communication, that they did not have access to computers, or they didn't really know how to use them. And technology did not sit still during the time we did. And I'm wondering if we now have access to things that would help people get computer access, et cetera, because technology has changed. I'm wondering if the baseline information really did change all that much, or are we now the beneficiaries of the things that have happened over the year that has now provided us with alternatives that didn't exist a year ago? So my 2 cents. I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around where we were a year ago. Yeah. I've been miserable for a year, and it may take me a while to dig out. So I appreciate, Sue, that you sent all of that documentation in the email. I need to go back through that and try to refresh my memory on what it is I thought I was doing a year ago.
For sure. I think we're all feeling some of that. I think that's really good insight, Joan, and it may be that and we can talk with Karen about it a bit more too, but that when those domain working groups are meeting, and those working groups are required to have 50% citizenship from the community, right? So if those community members, having lived through this last year, they may come at this plan around prioritizing what's needed or important in a very different way just because of those experiences. So, we may not need to revisit any of the data. We might just need to, knowing that those ideas are probably the same, but the plan that we create over the next year and a half or however long it might be might look very different than it would have if we didn't have this break.
I do think some things have shifted. I'm guessing, to your point, Joan, like mental health might be one of those that shifted for people, because that feeling like we were feeling isolated before because we were limited resources to get the things that we needed. A pandemic hits, and now all of that completely shifts. And now I'm so much more reliant on other people. And how does that impact my mental health from like an isolation? Like, I know it's impacted people that may never even have thought that they had those things. Just how do you wrap your head around being home 24/7 and that kind of, what does that do? So I think some of those things, again, it may not be worth the revisit. I just think I think about things very differently than I did a year ago when it comes to these things.
Very, yeah, really, really important for us to give some thought to make to that. Yeah. Any other feedback or thoughts? Okay, so in a very quick nutshell, that was our initial work that we did. As I said, I will try to pull together a bit of a package of documents, both documents that had been distributed previously. Specifically, I'm thinking about some of the stuff that Alexis had sent out. Some of the resources from AARP, I was on their website. They have added to those since, which doesn't surprise me. I think a lot of us over the last year took that time to be creative and create something. So there are some new tools available through the website that we might want to take advantage of. And then we had also started gathering a lot of tools, templates from other communities as well, who were ahead of us in this process. So Southfield, Auburn Hills, East Lansing, tools that they were using through this working group process and plan development. So those, as we move forward and think about what our next tasks might be, will be, helpful things for us to refer to and modify as we feel we need to. So, okay. So we're good with that. So the next agenda item is the task force chair. So I have made the decision to step down as chair. I will absolutely continue with the task force. I think what we're doing is really, really important and will bring great value to the city. Unfortunately, right now, I am just, the commitment of being chair on top of everything else is more than, I don't feel I'd be able to do the job that I would want to do, to be perfectly honest. So I have made that decision to step down, and I am I allowed to make a motion on this? Okay, so I would like to make a motion to nominate Sarah as chair, kind of moving forward, and happy to help in whatever way necessary, but I'm wondering if there's any discussion, comments with regards to that.
I mean, obviously appreciate the work you did. I think Sarah is a good choice to kind of move forward. She's definitely organized and focused and gets it done, which is helpful, especially in the new future that we have. So I'll second your motion.
Any other comments or discussion?
I think Sarah's an excellent choice.
Thank you, everyone. I
And
appreciate your
so-
confidence.
And, this is going to be a slog for all of us, Sarah,
Yes.
trying to figure out where the floor is.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I agree. I think you're going to be just fine.
I think we will all slug together. How's that?
Yeah, no question.
Sarah, this is Sue. I don't know you, but just from your enthusiasm thus far, I think you would be awesome.
Oh, thank you. So cute. I appreciate that. I definitely think I think I agree. We all have a long road ahead of us, but I think we should be methodical, intentional, and impactful about this. I don't think we need to, it's not a race. And I think we need to present a plan that we feel really comfortable with before we go back to AARP. And I'm not interested in we have to have this done in a year because that was the timeline before. I think we should take full advantage of pacing this at our comfort level, especially getting our bearings, getting back into it, all of those types of things. So I agree, Joan, it's going to be a slog. But I think we're going to kind of take some time to build our momentum, and then it'll take off and we'll be ready. But let's take the due time we need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I know we were, as we were kind of alluding to earlier, a little bit caught off guard when we saw that the full timeline and thought, oh, how are we you know, it was so much to try to pack in that I think it's a benefit to be able to kind of really dig in and make sure that this reflects this community in a way that's meaningful. So I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Any other comments?
I
Perfect.
guess this is Joan. I think it's just one for the general order of things. I did get the first vaccine. I have one more to go.
Yay.
And that was just bloody luck. I'll take it. But that leads me to my next comment. I don't know, and I don't think anybody else does, when meetings in person are going to make sense. And I think and I've done a lot of Zoom, and I like it because it's better than telephones, but it does not really afford us that synergy that happens when we're all in the same room. That said, I don't know how fast things are going to get going because of that. You know, it's I don't know where I am half the time, so I would hesitate to say, oh, sure, in another 2 meetings, we'll be rocking and rolling. I don't think so.
I can say I do work at a company that digs into this significantly. Just we have a whole strategy and analytics team, and I've seen some different models around like herd immunity, right? Like that's kind of what the golden thing is, right? So depending on the number of shots, I've seen it at 1 million shots. I think it would be July. If we do 1.5 million shots, it's June. And if we were doing 3 million shots a day, it gets into like May, late April, early May. So I'm not saying that that's anything more than a model, Joan, but that's kind of what the predictions are based on the number of shots in arms for herd immunity that I have seen. Again, that is just our internal data. I don't want, like, could be completely, but that's what they're working on based on number of shots in arms, where we could be by this summer, I would say.
And the only fly in the ointment is
Yes.
the new strains that are out there.
Absolutely.
That are nastier. And I don't know that anybody has a good handle on that just yet. Personally, I think there will probably be, for people like me, a booster shot coming for the most egregious of the variants that show up out there. I think it's probably optimistic for the end of July to have my so-called life back. And I've been at this a year, and I'm pretty good with being patient and working it out. So it's just a matter of me trying to figure out how to get back in the game, how to work through this data, try to catch up and dust off the brain cells that used to have some of this information in them. So we'll just have to see how it goes. It's an experiment.
Currently, the legislation is through March 31st for public meetings to be continued virtually, but it sounds like there's going to be a continuation on that at the state level for the next couple months. So for what that's worth.
Just really quickly, I think Sue Anderson is here as an attendee, and then we need to actually vote
Yes, we
on
do.
Sarah, not to get
Thank
lost
you.
in it all.
Thanks, Paul.
Oh, Susan, good. Okay, so we've had motion by me to nominate Sarah as chair, seconded by Paul, I believe. And if we could do a vote via roll again. So hi, Sue, and welcome. We're going to do introductions in a few minutes, but I believe you've been listening in for a little bit. So can I hear your vote with regards to the current motion? You'll have to unmute.
Aye.
Perfect. Joan,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Sue Wells,
Aye.
and Sue McKee, myself, aye. Perfect, motion passes. Thank you, Sarah.
A lot of work to do.
A lot of work to do.
And Joan, I think that when we put together our timeline, I was going back to your point about like when this all may come together. I think we put together timelines based on like this assumption here and this assumptions here, and like we build it out with some things of like we need to be in person for this in order for this to happen. So I think we can step that plan out. But I think you're right. I think we need to put some contingencies in there about, because I think about the working groups and where we were, and I don't know if we would achieve as much greatness. I think we can achieve a lot of great things over Zoom, but I do think that maybe it's a hybrid. Like maybe we do once in a while, we meet, just to kind of kick things off. Then we start to go on Zoom. I don't know what that looks like, but I think those are the types of things that we need to consider as we proceed, and proceed with caution. And like, I want to be thoughtful that even though if the governor lifts the restriction, that doesn't mean that we're comfortable. And I think that's something to also keep in mind is our own personal task force comfort levels with meeting in person. And I don't think that needs to be rushed. So I also want to be really thoughtful about that as well. So as we all are dealing with this in our own personal ways.
Yeah. And even thinking about like our initial plan, and obviously all of this can be modified based on what we think is going to work best going forward, but was to have this kickoff event, right? And where we could present all of the data and summarize sort of the information dump to the whole group to get people kind of excited about the process, and then going forward from there, then breaking off into our individual groups to do the individual work. Well, what does that look like now, right? And so it's all of those kinds of decisions that'll have to be made kind of moving forward, and it might look very different from what we had originally planned, but we'll figure that out. Cool. So do you want me to continue through the agenda, even though we've officially made you chair? Okay.
You can use this as your swan song.
That's
How's
right.
that?
Do a little song.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I emailed out, and I recognize it was just emailed out about a half hour before the meeting started, so you likely haven't seen it. This document was shared in, I believe, one of our working group sessions prior to the break, and that is the year 2 timeline based on AARP. So I kind of rescanned it and emailed that out to everyone. So if you have access to your email, pull it up. If not, you'll be able to look at it afterwards. So year 2 essentially is, as we've been talking about, creating the domain working groups, really crunching the data so that we know what we heard and make sure that that's accurate, presenting that to those working groups so that they can then move forward with their recommendations for each of the domains. One of the things that I should mention as well is we had made the decision to consolidate 3 of those working groups. We came up in one of the work sessions with a recommended name for that consolidated group, but we have not voted on that. So that is something that we would have to do if that's the name that we decide we want to go with. Are bells going off? You guys remembering all this? So the name that we had suggested, so we had talked about consolidating social inclusion and respect, participation, and the civic and employment domain, and we were going to consolidate those, and we had discussed using the new name of community engagement and inclusion. to reflect all of those areas.
So Sue, before we vote on this, I guess I'd love to hear from our two new Sues. It's like Sue Apocalypse here, like Sue. We have lots of Sues and Susans. I guess I wonder now, like I think about before, this was pre-pandemic, and then I think about all the other things that took place last year, and I think about inclusion and equality and all of those things. I wonder if this still makes sense, and before we go down the path, it could be worth revisiting, I guess, a little bit before. I mean, I know that Paul and Joan and I and Paige are privy to that, but maybe Susan, is it Susan and Sue? I'm sorry. Susan and Sue, they may want to talk through what that looks like for us, and then maybe we go through it. I don't know.
I don't want to speak for them.
No.
I'm wondering if, and I'll just throw this out, whether it makes sense to give our new members some time to get familiar with the domains.
Yeah.
And then we have the conversation. Does that make some sense?
Yeah.
That makes sense, yes.
Okay.
And just for his context, we did combine these because we heard a lot of very similar things. Again, I go back a year ago and some of these things were not as prevalent as they've been over the past year as well. So I think that could be revisited.
Okay. Why don't we table this and just give everybody a chance to sort of regroup and get familiar again with each of the domains, what the purpose of each domain is, and then we can continue the conversation from there. The difference that would also make, which is something to think about, is a task force member is ideally the lead for each of those domains. So having 8 domains versus 6 domains is something that we'd have to just plan around.
There may be an opportunity to combine one of the other ones now too. So I guess I would just leave it open to like, we can combine for Sue and Susan. There's no like footprint. We can combine things. We can keep them all separate. Like we kind of have the opportunity to present what plan works for us. So as you read through them and you start to look through them, certainly we're always going to be open to ideas of how to tackle this in the new 2021. So.
And it doesn't have to be the 6 or the 8. It could be we combine 2 of them and leave one that we feel is more urgent. Really, the model is up to us. There were some communities who added additional domains because in particular, one community added a domain specific around personal safety because that was a concern for their community. So it really is meant to reflect Royal Oak and what we feel is going to be most helpful.
I just have a question. Where would I be able to access the information that's already been discussed on this?
I will send out some information. I'll send out some packets, the minutes. And Carol, I know you might be able to help with this. I believe that they're all on the city website. I could not find them when I went, at least not easily, when I went to look for them to kind of prepare for tonight. I had them in my emails, but I'm assuming they have to be posted. Oh, there's thank you.
That's for AARP. So Susan, I posted a link to just the AARP's age-friendly communities so that you can just start to look at it from a general sense while Sue's compiling the more Royal Oak specific things.
Okay.
But it's some good resources that's kind of where we all started, was at this funnel, and have funneled it down.
Yep. Yep.
I will look for this.
On the city website is the actual PowerPoint from the kickoff event that gives a good overview of the program. And on the website, I believe now too, they have additional resources that help to explain and introduce. I think there's actually videos possibly from Karen's presentation around each of the domains. So there's quite a wealth of information.
Okay, I will check it out.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and Carol is saying that she can go back through James and Alexis's files, and just to make sure that everything gets sent out with regards to old minutes, because I think that would be helpful. As I mentioned earlier, I sent out our notes from our 2 working sessions, but there was a whole lot that came before that. So it would be helpful to kind of take a look at those for sure.
I have now posted the link to our Royal Oak friendly
Okay.
age site, and I also just posted the kickoff event presentation for you, Susan, in the chat.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's the beauty of like 8 screens.
I
Yeah.
know.
You can-
I know. Yes, I've got 3 going, but
I know.
Okay, so ideally within the year, essentially based on the overview that AARP put out, we're going to at this point give ourselves some leeway with what that might look like, but it would be pulling those domain working groups together. Who is going to be a part of those working groups? They need to have 50% representation of community members, citizens, and the rest might be city employees that are relevant to that particular domain, department heads, that sort of thing, and other subject area experts that we would invite to participate in those as well. We had created a large spreadsheet of ideas. We'd done some brainstorming around who we might want to approach to participate in these groups. We also had citizens at the focus groups volunteer if they were interested in being a participant in one of the working groups. So we do have that existing data, whether now a year later that all of those people are still in those same roles or are still interested and available to participate. We'll have to look at that. That is something that I also emailed out, was Alexis's document of who from the city had volunteered, who from the community had voiced interest. And so that was emailed out, but obviously we're going to have to do some work around that moving forward as well.
I apologize. I was sure this meeting was at 7 o'clock.
Hi. So yes, so running then the domain groups where each of those groups would make recommendations, create some ideas around specific tasks and goals that would then be incorporated into the large plan. There are lots of samples of plans that have been created in other communities around the country. They are available. Most of them are available through the website that Sarah shared. There were a couple that we had identified that we really liked. So those are ones that we can maybe highlight for you. And they were ones that we thought that the setup of those plans was really accessible for people and presented the information in a really digestible kind of way. Boston was one in particular that we had liked, but there were others. So then that's the end goal, is that we would then have this plan with very specific short-term goals, long-term goals that would then be presented to the city and with some implementation going forward. And this, my understanding is that the task force would then help to sort of keep track of how things are going with regards to implementing those recommendations. Anything that I missed or didn't quite explain fully, feel free to jump in, anybody.
Good.
Okay. So the next agenda item is next steps, and we may or may not be fully ready to develop those, but we might have some initial thoughts around some of the things that we might need to do to sort of get the wheels in motion again. one of the things is, as we talked about, is to look at the domains and our earlier recommendation to consolidate those. So that's something, you know, we'll let you, the new members, kind of get caught up, and then we can, as I suggested, revisit that conversation and decide, make a decision about how we'd like to go forward with that. One thing is the data. So I think that this is really important. Sarah raised that really relevant question around sort of, do we have to think about the data a year later, and what does that look like? Joan had suggested that the data might be the same, but the work that comes out of that data might be different now that we've lived through this past year. My question around the data is, so Alexis had pulled from so the data right now looks like all of these written notes from those domain working groups. The group members or participants would create aspiration sheets from that conversation. So they would highlight their priorities based on the conversation that was had at the table for each of the domains. And then all of the survey data. So all of that's been gathered. Alexis pulled out some key themes from all of those handwritten notes from each focus group, and distributed that information along with, I believe, the raw data for each of the domains. My question is whether we actually need more detailed analysis of that information. I'm not confident that it is like a really careful analysis, particularly of the survey information you're able to tease out and pull out, and that information is able to be analyzed in a different way than the information that was gathered at the focus groups. I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are with that, whether there's an option to have that analyzed further. Commissioner Douglas, do you have any thoughts on that?
Talking about the quantitative survey?
I'm thinking all the qualitative stuff that we have in particular.
You mean the focus group results?
Yes.
So I quickly reviewed those today, and they cover the waterfront. I mean, they don't have any weighting at all. And I think if you look through them, I would be very surprised if we repeated those events, if we got different results. And I think the fact that in each session, the same themes emerged over and over again. So what Sue, you said about, this may affect, what we know about COVID in the past year may affect our work group results, but it's
right.
More in terms of emphasis. I mean, I'll use as an example, one of the observations was that wouldn't it be nice if groceries delivered and you could get your prescriptions delivered? So I think I think there's maybe even more valuable lessons we've learned in this past year. And I don't think the passage of time has undercut the validity of those observations.
Right. What I'm wondering about, though, is whether the analysis of, I agree with you. I don't think we'd hear things that are that different. I'm wondering more about the analysis of the information that we have already gathered. Because as I said, Alexis pulled out some key themes, but do we need to go further with that? Or do we feel that what she pulled out does give a good, like if that's the information that the working groups are going to use to kind of move forward with, okay, this is what we heard from the community about communication, for example, do we feel like the information that we have pulled out from that data is meaningful enough for that work, or do we need to have Cobalt or somebody provide some further analysis?
So is your question more about, the document I reviewed, is that what you're talking about, the Alexis's
key themes?
Key themes. Okay, yeah, then that is what I read. Yeah, and the problem there is everything gets equal weight. And we haven't really done any sort of analysis to prioritize within those domains, as it were. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, and
Sue, sorry, Sue. Does that document capture the aspirations?
I think that's in a separate document. So I
'Cause
think that's
even-
part of the concern is we've got these multiple pots of information. So I think we've got the raw data, which was just capturing all of the conversation. And then we have the aspirations, but we were worried that the aspirations might not reflect sort of the depth of the conversation. And so, and then we've got the key, so we've got bits and pieces, but I don't feel like we have a synthesized sense of what the data is telling us.
Do we has that all been sent or stored somewhere that we have access to it?
Yes, that's
Okay.
my understanding, yes.
So
All
I guess,
of the notes have,
Okay.
like, because she retyped all of the notes
Jesus,
from
wow.
those focus groups, and then she has all the aspiration sheet has been compiled as well, and then the survey, of course, is separate data, and
Yeah.
that was separated out based on the online surveys versus the in-person surveys, because we wanted to be able to tease out, were we getting different responses?
So do we just need one spot? I'm not saying we combined it, but it seems like we need one spot where all of this data, it could live on different tabs for all I know, but like we need some place. If you want to send it to me, I can take a stab at, I'm not going to analyze it, but I can take a stab at consolidating it. So we at least have it in one, we'll say one document. It could be like our master document. Shar, you look concerned.
No, I'm listening.
Oh, I'm like, I can get it all into, like, let's say one Excel spreadsheet, and then we can start to figure out how we want to parse it out a little bit more. But I think having it in four different spots doesn't, I think we can have a tab that says these are aspirations, and we can break it down. And then we can have a tab that's like survey data, survey data phone, survey data online, focus group data. And then we can start to pull and look, and we can create some pivot tables and some things like that might help us see some of these things come alive. But I think, and then we may find that we put it all in there, and then we need to pull it out by domain and put it all in so kind of cross up a couple of different ways to slice and dice it that I'm envisioning that might help us. Because I think if I'm going back, I think I signed up for leading communication. Like if I see all of the communication in one place, that might help me figure out how to lead those conversations versus trying to look in 6 different tabs. So I can try to put together a couple of spreadsheets that bring all of that together for us. So at least we can start deciding how we want to digest it. That's all I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So
because right now it is somewhat scattered, and even, I think it's even having a look at it and determining, are there pieces that we need to tease out and pull out, right? So I know there had been some discussion when Alexis sent out the initial kind of survey results, where I believe, Charlene, you had said, okay, you'd like to kind of do some cross tabulation to sort of figure out how things line up with, and so much time has passed that maybe we do need to kind of sit and take a look at it and figure out, okay, we've got all this information, how do we make it manageable so that we can move forward with it, and what else has to happen?
I know one thing we also talked about was that like some of the stuff had a lot of crossover. So like, just because like I think of like civic and inclusion or whatever, when you start to really go a little bit deeper and root cause some of that stuff, it really is at the root a communication issue. And so like, I think we all need to probably, once we've looked through the data, let's get it all in one place, and then we can start to analyze it for ourselves. I think we need to bring back our kind of conclusions of where we think those intersectionality is a little bit before we get into these focus groups that we're going to create. I think we need to have a better understanding of that.
And some of that was addressed, if you remember, when they were talking about the domain working groups, and particularly when we had our conversation with the lead from Southfield, I think. And
yeah.
right, and so they created, for example, reports from each domain meeting that were then shared with all of the other domains, so that everyone was aware of what everyone was doing. And if there was an issue that might overlap with another group, that could be flagged. So that was one way that they had these like reporting forms after each. And I think I have those templates that they've used, so that intersectionality was captured, and you could decide, okay, we're going to hand this off to communication, or who was going to take the lead on that particular piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
Lots happened in a year.
A lot has happened. Yeah. Now I'm pulling out some of these things
I
that
know.
were in. Yeah. But
Yeah,
that,
I appreciate Sarah's offer to assemble this all for us. And like for one of us her to sit down and take a, look at it, a fresh look at it, and start to maybe boil it down to find, we have Alexa's key themes, but there are a lot of key themes. And I suspect we could narrow that down to fewer key themes that would help the work groups do their work. So yeah,
Yeah.
Sarah, if you would do that, that would be like super awesome.
Nothing but time, Sharon, nothing but time. In between all the homework for school and, I got lots of time on my hands. No, I would be happy to take a stab at it. I need to get more familiar with it. So it'll be a good opportunity for me to really dig into it. So yeah, I think we have to really think about it. And Sharon, before you got on the call, we did talk about like creating a roadmap, and that roadmap being very methodical about different ways that we need to get back, not necessarily tonight, but I'm just thinking like we need to present something to Karen at some point of how we want to approach this as a city, and really thinking through like, if we can't meet in person, having some contingency points in our roadmap, a little bit of our timeline that we present so that it's realistic. It's not super, it's all been in one thing, like the governor lifting the orders on this day. And if that doesn't happen, we're back at square one. So we can talk through that more at the next meeting, and everyone's had some time to think and digest all of this, but really putting together, it could take us a year and a half, and being comfortable that that's what we're willing to present.
So one of the things I
Yeah.
deeply apologize for not
That's
paying
okay.
attention to the agenda, but one of the things we're seeing in the planning community around Michigan is that communities are successfully doing effective community engagement through remote methods such as this. It's a different challenge. So people who prefer to come in person don't get what they want, but people who are shy or not mobile or don't want to travel at night can participate in this way. And some of the things we're seeing are, you have to have a tons of advance notice. But with the roadmap, as Sarah mentioned here, if we've got a timetable and we've got it all kind of scoped out as to what's going to happen when, we could get this process rolling again digitally. In my opinion, I think we could do that. It's just a different roadmap and a sort of different vibe, but I think it's doable.
that's a really good point, I think, Charlene, because I know my experience over this past year, things professionally related that we had done in person that were very successful. We then, pivoted like everybody else and started to provide those in a digital way. And we attracted a completely different group of people. And it was just purely because they lived in, and this wouldn't necessarily hold true, but it speaks to your point, in like more rural parts of the community, or as you say, maybe they don't drive at night, or any number of other things. And so we were able to tap into a completely different group of people. So it was a benefit that they were able to then access information or participate in a way that they hadn't when it was in person. So there's some.
and carrying on with that, the work groups won't necessarily all be Royal Oak residents. I mean, we want subject matter experts who may be located elsewhere in the region. It makes it that much easier for them to participate.
We may get better experts now because we can take them from anywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
They don't have to be in driving distance.
right.
They just
So
have to be in Zoom distance.
Yeah.
Yay!
So anyway, I'm game to push this forward, put together, as you say, a roadmap, a timetable that's effective and feasible. And I think we could make this work. It'll take longer. As one of you said, it might take longer than a year, but I think we can do it.
Absolutely. One thing I think thinking about is there's been a lot of change at City Hall as well. Do we, and Sharon, I'll lean on you on this, do we need to regroup with the city manager?
Well, so my question in all of this is, who is going to staff this? Who will tie the bell on that cat's tail? Because this is a big clerical administrative process with a lot of emails, a lot of pulling together participants, making sure they know when the meeting is, making sure they're coming, etc. I think we agreed long ago that we all would take a domain and be responsible, basically be the scribe and information source for that. But this still needs somebody who can do that clerical work. It was the assistant to the city manager. That position is currently open, but I don't expect it to be filled for several months. So that's the essential question, is who's going to do the clerical work. I did ask the city manager that, and Sue, did you and Carol Schwanger correspond on this also? Do I recall?
Yeah.
And I thought I saw her saying she would do it, and I thought, no. She's way too busy.
Right.
I volunteered to do it, but there are problems with taking a very central staff role and body of information out of the public arena and onto my hard drive, basically. So I have the time, I'm retired, I'm willing to do that. I don't want to do it, but if it means getting this done, I will do it.
Yeah, I agree with, I think both of those things. I think the staffing thing definitely has to be figured out. And I think it also speaks to, and I know the city's got an awful lot that they're trying to navigate. I think it also speaks on some level to sort of the commitment to this process and this project. And so at least what is the plan? And getting some real clarity on that, and whether that comes from, back to Sarah's point, around having as a get together with Paul Drake around, this is what this project is. This is what kind of do the review of, just to bring him up to speed, right? Because he stepped in also at the time of all of this, and wouldn't necessarily be as familiar unless he's been in another community that maybe has gone through this process. So I think there could be some real benefit to helping to get him on board with what it is that we're doing and caught up to speed. I agree with Sarah on that.
This is Joan. I have a question. What's the possibility of obtaining disk storage place on the city server for the information that collectively we would use when we were talking about somebody who's going to do the clerical business of managing the calls and organizing, making sure everybody's on board, rather than have that stored on my computer? Would it not be advantageous to have storage space available on the city website, not the website, but the city server, because they do regular backups? I'm notorious for not doing good backups. And that way, if the composition of this team changes, and it probably will, that data we don't have to worry about obtaining it on a DVD or a CD and then somehow loading it somewhere. So my thought is, if it's possible, and we would be allowed to do this, that would probably be the best place to put the kind of information that we have.
So somebody just posted storage or access. I think you would need at least one person who has access from this task force, but I mean, so you could at least upload it. I mean, in the interim, we could do something on Google Drive, but I think it's city information. So I do think that I would want to, Paige, do you have any thoughts on how that works? Or I know Alexis, I think, was using Google Drive. So
You would have to go through Mike Kirby at IT because there is so much storage on the sites with all the different experiencing when we were doing classes remotely and stuff like that. But that's a little bit different because it's a lot more data. But that's where I would start probably is find out from Kirby, Mike Kirby in the IT department to find out if we could even do something like that.
okay.
Yeah, I did. I raised in asking the city manager about how we were going to handle this. I mean, I did ask that question because there are security issues with non-city employees accessing that online data. And that was why I asked, because I mean, and I'm a city employee. So, I mean, technically I could probably do it, but letting everybody see and use and access stores files on the city server, probably not. Paige is nodding.
Yeah, I can work with Carol to see what solutions we can come up with, but I do think it's something to talk through. I'll follow up with Carol offline.
Well, I'll ask Paul. I'll ask the
Okay.
city manager. I mean, Sue knows, I didn't copy everybody on this, but Sue knows I've been corresponding with him on this subject for the past few months.
Oh, okay.
And I pushed his button before, and now that we have met, I'll push his button again and let Carol push it as well.
Okay. Sounds good. Great idea though, Joan. I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
So as far as any sort of concrete next steps, I think we came up with a couple of tasks. My sense is that we all would like a little bit of time to sort of reorient ourselves around what we've done, what we know at this point in time, for the new members to get familiar with exactly what all of this is, so that we can all be on the same page and make plans to what those next steps specifically need to look like, unless other people have other thoughts around that.
I think the only thing I can think of is probably just starting to set a meeting cadence so we can work with Carol but everyone on this call, we're going to need to draw the line in the sand and start somewhere. So
yes.
That would be the only thing. I can offer a couple of meeting dates, Wednesday, March 17th or Wednesday, March 24th. April 5th is open. I would honestly say April 5th. That gives everybody almost a month. Like, I just know the data is dense and like there's a lot to digest. And so I guess I'm going to say like, I'm not going to have time to go through it by March 17th. So if I would like to propose that maybe we do April 5th, that gives everyone close to a month to digest all of this. And we can, correspond, like as Sue sends things out, like I got the data and I'm looking through it. And if you have questions, by all means, I know Sue's available, I'm available, Shara's always available, makes herself available to talk through contextually any of the information that you're going over. But I guess I'd like at least a month to kind of put my thoughts together of what we need to do. And but I'm open if somebody else feels really passionate that we can do this sooner.
Okay.
That works with me.
And I would suggest, particularly for our new members, if once you've had a chance to look at it, as Sarah mentioned, I'd be happy to, have a phone call or a Zoom meeting with you individually, just to kind of clarify anything, or, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. You have my email, so I'd be happy to talk that through with anyone. So yeah, first Mondays work fine for me too. That's kind of what's being put on the table.
And do we want to do like 6:30. Does that work better for you? I think Sue Anderson was the one that had 6 was a tough one for.
So yeah, even 6:30 is tough, but you know,
Okay.
I'll do my best to be there whatever time it's.
Shar apparently like 7. So
Yeah, the 7 would work better for me too, but
I was just sitting around doing nothing, going, I better get ready for my meeting.
well, yay, you're here.
7 works
So-
for me.
7 works for me too.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's just do first Mondays at 7. That seems like the consensus for everyone. If that, I don't know,
Sounds
do we have to
good.
make that a proposal? Do we have to make that a motion and all that stuff?
Why
Charlotte?
don't, yeah, good idea.
I would like to make a motion that we meet on the first Monday at 7 p.m.
I second.
Okay, so let's vote. Sue Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Douglas,
Yes,
Joan,
Aye.
Sarah, obviously.
Aye.
Yeah. Paul,
Aye.
Sue Wells,
I,
and myself, Sue McKee, aye. Perfect,
Okay.
motion passes. So Mondays, first Mondays at 7 is what the plan is.
Paige, are you okay?
Yes, I'm listening very patiently.
Okay, I'm just gonna, you had your look. I'm like, I want to make sure we haven't lost Paige.
Perfect.
Nope, I'm here.
Awesome.
Okay, so let's do formal introductions at the end of the meeting, but it gave us a chance to make sure that everybody was able to join us. So maybe what we can do is, just because we've got a couple new people, introduce yourself, share anything that you feel is relevant, and maybe add to that, what is one unexpected thing that's come out of the last year? I could come up with probably 30 of those. Okay, I'll give you 10 seconds to think about that, and then I'll start just to get the ball rolling. So I am Sue McKee. I've been a Royal Oak resident for more than 30 years, and I'm a social worker professionally. And one unexpected thing that's come out of this last year, I have always seen myself as an introvert. I'm a pretty quiet person. I am not nearly as introverted as I thought I was. Let me leave it at that. So that's been my unexpected surprise from the last year. I miss people. Sue Anderson, why don't you go next?
Okay, Susan Anderson. I've lived in Royal Oak since the early 80s. I'm a registered nurse, still working. And oh boy, this past year has been a tough one. I don't know. I find I'm a little bit more able to go with the flow. I may not like it, but I find I've learned to accept things and to do what is necessary to get through it and to make sure that everybody is safe.
Perfect. I've been calling you Sue and I apologize. Do you prefer Susan?
Susan.
Okay. My mother calls me Susan.
Yeah.
Commissioner Douglas.
we almost have a quorum of Susans on this
That's
committee.
right, we do.
They have to think about that. So I'm Charlene Douglas. I'm the city commissioner, and I have been passionate about dealing with our aging population. When I looked at the data, this is back probably in 2014, through some of my planning work, and saw what was happening as the baby boom moved its way through society and what the impacts were going to be on our cities. So that's why I was enthusiastic about this task force and really pushed to make it happen and to link up with AARP. I would say that the pandemic has really tested my cooking ability in a good way, because if you couldn't go to the store all the time. You had to make do with, a half a brick of cream cheese and a slice of ham and, bottle of lemonade or lemon juice. And so it was like sort of a little mini cooking competition show in my house. Open the refrigerator and see what I can throw together. And it's made me a better cook.
What's the Cooking Network show where they get the basket of ingredients?
Chopped.
Chopped.
That was my basket.
That's great. Joan.
Joan Johnson. I've lived in Royal Oak since 1993, which is weird for me because I used to move every 7 years. And 2020, I am an introvert. I am perfectly happy being at home. I miss lots of people, but as I have frequently said, I like people, but I prefer dogs. And my dog, Fred, is the one who's helped me get through this last year. I got a lot of music learned and developed some new practice skills to help me actually put things together and remember them. My poor brain. It's like, you want me to do what? And I've seen a ton of Westerns. It's where I went because everything was horrible. And I always knew how the Western was going to end.
That's great. I think we've all picked up new skills, right? That's been one of the gifts of this, I think, has been that we've all taken time to learn some things that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise. So that's great. Sarah.
So I'm Sarah Kinninger. I work as a communications strategist on the public relations team at Rocket Mortgage. That's what I do during the day. I am also the chair of the Parks, Recreation, and Senior Services Advisory Board. It's a mouthful. And what have I learned? I learned that watching myself on video for 8 hours has made me absolutely obsessed with beauty products. So I have bought everything from anti-aging to shining, like you name it. Like I have become obsessed. Like we have Sephora being dropped off at our house like once a week because I can't stand looking at myself every day. What are you laughing at, Paige? Like I get older every time I turn on the computer, like a day older. I did go back to school for graphic design during this, and so I'm almost finished with school. So I'm kind of excited about that. And the other unexpected thing is we decided to get a COVID puppy, whom you saw earlier as they got shut out because they're very busy. It's a blue tick coonhound. He's very talkative, especially when I'm on conference calls. So that is a little bit about me, and I'm excited to be part of this task force again and work with all of you.
Thanks, Sarah. Paul.
My name is Paul Webb. I've lived in Royal Oak since the day I was born in 1989. What happened to me in 2020? Started a new job the week before the shutdown. I got COVID a month into the shutdown. We have a baby. We have a COVID baby.
Yay!
His name is Julian. He was born 9 pounds, 14 ounces, just before Christmas. Big, not as big as me. I was 12'9" when I was born, which is yeah, that's right, Sarah. But I got both my shots in February because I work in a nursing home. So still not sure I'm going to see people.
I told people I can't come back until I hug. I can't wait to hug people. I'm so tired of people I miss everyone.
Congratulations, Paul. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Sue Wells.
Hi, I'm Sue Wells. I've been a resident of Royal Oak for over 25 years. I'm a happy resident. I currently work at Oakland County Parks. I'm the manager of Parks and Recreation Operations. And in a week, I will be the interim executive officer. So I was taking in everything you were saying and trying to read your information on my other phone. So very interested in the process of what you're going through. It was not that I was not interested by not verbalizing. I'm wanting to give back to the community in that with my job, many people help us, and I felt it was time to give back. This year has been a challenge. I've seen my mom once since October. She's in a living facility and she's going to outlive us all. And what's interesting in our business is we have never been as busy as we are. Our trails usage is up to 228%. So people want to be outside. They're ready to get out there.
Yeah, that's great. When I think about it over the winter, like how many times did I sit on someone's outdoor patio when it was 24 degrees out, right? Which a year ago I never would have done. So, yep. And now I'm happy to do it. Yeah, that's great. So any other thoughts or comments before we move on to public comment? Thank you all for sharing. And
I think we should introduce Paige because she's a vital member, even though she doesn't vote.
Yes.
Paige does sit through these meetings, and I think she's a huge impact on this team as well. So
no question. And I didn't have you on my list, I apologize.
It's okay, no problem. No problem at all. Paige Gimbarski/Ballinger. I've been married now a year and a half. Yep, year and a half. I'm glad we did that back in 2019 because it wouldn't probably happened in 2020. Been with the city 13 years. And then prior to that, I was in Ferndale for 22 years. What I have learned in 2020 is how creative the senior center really has become with COVID, meaning that we aren't able to interact with the seniors and the adults with disabilities. And that is huge, obviously, with seniors. But we have been able to be very creative internally and doing a lot of curbside stuff. We have a lot of really great, exciting things coming, obviously now in the spring and summer, because we can be outside doing classes and stuff like that. So I guess that's the one thing that we've really went back, especially me in majoring in Parks and Recreation Administration, is my creativity, going back and sitting down with, the staff. And we have a full-time assistant now, which is absolutely wonderful. And she's a Royal Oak resident herself. So the creativity within that is really nice, and getting back to life being so much more simple, like Sue said about outside walking the trails. We're in the senior center watching and working every day, rotating our days, and it's amazing how many little ones you see on their bikes with their parents, skateboarding, taking their dogs for a walk, and visiting the Arboretum behind us. And those are just such beautiful, simple things that I think our very fast-paced world has forgotten about. Nature is so beautiful. And I think people have really, like you said, 200 and some %. It's insanity, like that we've really gotten in touch with ourselves and the world, I think. So the bad things, I think some really good things have come out of it, in my personal opinion. That in a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
And Sue Wells is definitely going to be when I saw that come across my email, I was like, oh yes, we need to get her on Parks and Rec. But now she's taking on another big role as interim. Wow,
it's only about a half year max. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad to see Sue Wells and Susan Anderson. Welcome aboard.
Glad to be aboard.
I will say when the city commission makes appointments, we rotate, and I was in the rotation where both of these Sue's applications came up, and Sue Wells, the only committee she applied for was this one, but Sue Anderson had applied for a couple of others and we were fighting over her. And I won, woohoo!
I don't think I've ever been fought over before.
There you go.
Look forward to getting to know everybody and reconnecting with everybody as we kind of get things moving forward again. So last on the list here, before we adjourn, is public comment. I'm not quite sure. Carol, do you sort of navigate that?
Yes, I am here to help you with that. There are 4 individuals in the audience, and I see one already has a virtual hand up. So members of the audience, you are allowed to make a public comment, 3 minutes in length. We would like you to state your name to begin your public comment. If anyone is using a phone and doesn't have the button for raising your hand, please know you can hit *9 and that will raise your virtual hand for us to see that you'd like to make a public comment. And I will start by allowing our first individual to speak. So she'll be coming into the panelist. And Barbara Schultz, you are all set to begin making your public comment when you're ready.
Thank you for inviting the public to join your meeting. I am Barbara Schultz. I live at 4229 Yorba Linda in Royal Oak, and I've been here the last 20 years, but I was born and raised all through school here. And in fact, my family goes back to over 100 years, 1901. My great-great-grandmother moved to Royal Oak, so I have deep roots. I really thank all of you for the time that you're putting in and your commitment to this project. I'm new to learning about it though, so I will do some homework too and try to catch up with where you're at. You do have a daunting task ahead of you. But I do appreciate you wanting to involve the public. I hope to be involved, and I want to comment primarily on what I feel is the urgency of time. I'm sorry that you weren't able to use technology the last year. I think the world has seen how technology can be used, and I'm glad, Shar Douglas, that you commented on the benefit of it. I myself have a disability that makes it difficult for me to navigate. I use a walker and have some issues with that sometimes require a wheelchair. So it's very hard for me to participate, but on Zoom, I can be there. So I hope that you actively pursue that. Those of you who aren't familiar with how well you can conduct a meeting on Zoom, I think once you see how it works, that you will realize, yeah, it's a little bit different than being in person, but I think it can work very well. And I encourage you to do that. So I appreciate the time and hope to see you all in the future at meetings. Thank you. I'll yield my time.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to make a public comment? Wegman.
Yeah, this is Janice Wagman, 600 Wellesley, Royal Oak. First of all, I want to thank Sue McKee for being chairing this. She's been very organized, and I think has done an excellent job of conducting the committee. And Sarah, you got big shoes to fill, but I've seen you in action, and I think you're an excellent choice to take over the reins on this. So thank you for being volunteered to do that. I also want to thank Bernadette Beach, who's no longer on the committee, for all the work that she put forth. And a special thank you in memoriam for Stephanie Comtois and all of the work that she put forward, even though she was quite ill so many times. And for those that don't know, she has since passed away. As far as the committee, when you were discussing documents, but not only are you having troubles seeing them and storing them and what have you, the only documents I ever see attached to the agendas are the minutes. And I think a lot of these documents that you're talking about, for the sake of transparency, should be attached and included with your agenda so that the public can see them and make comment and understand what's going on in the committee. Also, one other thing. Oh, as far as the Zoom and digital meetings, yes, they're very beneficial. I've been able to attend meetings that I normally wouldn't have attended in the past. I enjoy doing it in this manner. However, we need to keep in mind that you will be excluding a significant portion of the senior population, those that don't have computers or tablets or smartphones and aren't able to attend or don't know how or just don't have access to it. So I think we need to keep that in mind when we're doing this. That's all, and glad to see you're back meeting, and hopefully we can hit the road running with this and get some things accomplished. Thank you.
And Joan would also like to make a comment. Joan, if you're on a phone, hit *6 and that will unmute you. Joan, you still need to unmute. If you hit *6, it will unmute you.
I'm unmuting. There.
There you go.
Okay, I'm Joan Kelch and I live at 4361 Arden Place, and I've lived in Royal Oak since 1961. And I guess I've just wanted to watch this because I didn't know anything about it. I saw it on the email, I guess, from the city, and I'm an older person who is interested in aging in place, and so I thought, well, I'll see what's going on. Could you tell me what this AARP document is that you keep referring to?
I'm wondering, because I think we were talking about in general that there are lots of documents on their website specific to what this program is, what the components of it are. The only document that was emailed out was it's like a 2-year in review. And so it's like,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it just breaks down sort of the tasks.
Okay, so there is no document of things to follow or some.
On the AARP website,
Okay, all right, I'll take a look at that. Okay, thank you. That's all. I was just curious about. That's one of the things that I'm concerned about, is staying in my house and my garden. Okay, thanks.
Joan, I put a link to the livable communities in the chat if you can get to it, but if you just Google search it, you'll find it as well.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. So do attendees see the chat as well?
I put it so that I put it so it was panelists and attendees versus just panelists.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Also, as we go back to clerical tasks, if you want to send the documents to me, I can link them to the agenda even after the meeting. So Sumiki, if you wanted to forward those documents to me, I'd be happy to put them as links on the agenda, just like I build the city commission.
Yeah, I did.
I could do that.
Thank you, Carol. I did CC you on those. I apologize. It was very late. So those weren't sent out until a half hour or so before the meeting started. That was the earliest opportunity I had. So you should have those.
Okay, no problem. I'll do that in the morning And so they'll be available tomorrow on the city's website. And I can also probably copy those links that Sarah provided in the chat. I can provide those. Another thought I had as I was listening to Janice Wagman, we do record these and we put them on YouTube, and we can certainly make sure that they are replayed on WROK. I can ask the WROK manager to do that, and that might help to get to a segment of the population that would only see things on cable TV if they don't have access to computers. And that was all I wanted to say about the comments and things that I can follow up on that can help the group.
So I noticed in the chat, Gail Linden, was she wanting to comment? I see us.
Did not raise her virtual hand.
Okay. Because in the chat, we have a *6 in there, so or a *9 and then a *6. So I was wondering if she was trying to raise her hand.
That's a possibility. Why don't I give her access, allow her to talk? There we go.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Am I on? I don't see myself.
Gail, you are on if you
Okay.
want to start your public comment.
Thank you very much. My name is Gail Linden, and I live in Huntington Woods and have since 1957, but I went to Royal Oak schools when Huntington Woods in the front part close to Woodward used to cross Woodward and go over to Washington Elementary School and Clara Barton Junior High and to Dondero. I'm very active in my own community and in my own senior advisory committees here and the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I wanted to sit in on this particular meeting because I still do sell real estate and I sell quite a bit in Royal Oak, and people are asking what's going on in Royal Oak and what's there for us. And I'm jealous that, Huntington Woods doesn't have a senior center for us to go to, but we have a Parks and Rec and we have a small room there and we're very active. So my question to you is this is the first time that you're meeting in a year, and is this meeting specifically just to address the ARP program of Aging in Place Task Force, or is it a senior committee that, has any other purpose? Because we've been really, really active during COVID by doing things through the senior advisory, through Parks and Rec and so on. And I just wondered whether those things were available to the seniors. And as Janice and other people have said, a lot of people don't have internet and so on, but whether you put it out on YouTube or other kinds of things, it really is helpful. And I'm not used to not being in a meeting and seeing myself. And, I know we got Zoom bombed at a commissioners meeting. So now they're on YouTube and, we can't be on there unless we call in and we *9 ourselves and do it that way. So I think that you have a task ahead of you. I look forward to seeing what comes out of it in this particular plan. And we look to other communities around us to see what they're doing. We're pushing very heavily here in Huntington Woods to get outdoor exercise equipment, not just for seniors, but for anybody who wants to exercise outside, especially since we've been outside throughout a whole year. I thank you for allowing me to be in on your meeting and to talk to you.
Thanks, Gail. Just to answer your question, we currently have the Parks, Rec, and Senior Services Advisory Board for the city, of which I am the chair. I know Janice has been pushing for years to have a dedicated Senior Services Board, but that currently sits with Parks and Rec, and that will be meeting that meets the first Thursday of every month if you'd like to join that. So we'll be meeting, I think, this coming Thursday.
Is that in the evening? I babysit my
Yep.
grandchildren on
I
Thursdays.
think it's 7. I don't know. We've been
Okay.
playing with the time a little bit. So I think we're back to the first Thursdays at 7 again, but you're always welcome to join. And I am the chair of that advisory board. So if you have any questions or would like to discuss anything offline, please let me know. I'd be happy to spend some time talking through those things.
Thank you.
Now, I can confirm for Sarah that it is at 7 p.m. on Thursday.
Thank
And
you.
Go to the city's website. You will find the agenda on there.
And Gail, we have to apologize. You totally got photo bombed by Paul's baby.
I like
It's the
it.
cutest
Paul's
thing
baby's
ever.
beautiful.
So cute, the little mohawk.
Yeah.
Obsessed.
Cute.
Awesome. I believe that that is it for our agenda. So we need a motion to adjourn.
So
Also,
moved.
I'll second that.
Oh gosh, we have to vote, don't we? I keep forgetting that part. Okay, so I lost my list of people, so I'm going to go with who was on my screen. Paul,
Aye.
Joan,
Aye.
Sue Wells,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Susan Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Douglas,
aye.
myself, I. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. Okay, motion passes. Great night. Paige?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
It was great to see everybody.
Great
It
to
was
see
nice to see
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to see everyone. Thank you for joining us,
All right.
Julian.
Thank you.
Good night.
See you
Have a
next
good
time.
night.
Night.